Hello there, this is Beth with question and answer, and the question that was asked was, what's my favorite yoga pose? I had to think a little bit on this one because it's hard to choose like a favorite, and I'm not like, it's like when people ask me my favorite song, I was just like, oh my god, you pick a favorite song. I mean, really, how can you have, there's so much music out there. How can you have one favorite song? You can have something that like I'm listening to. So I had to think because favorites always kind of stump me. And I like backbends a lot. Probably one of the few freaky people who are like, ooh, yay, backbends. Um, but really, what it came down to, I'm like, what's my favorite yoga pose? And it really kind of came down to a pose in Anusara that's often referred to as atomic pigeon. And atomic pigeon is where kind of you start in a lunge position, kind of like if you were, like when you're doing a sun salutation, you putting that back leg back and your hands are on the floor in front of your other bent leg. And it kind of starts in that lunge position, but your foot's a little bit more over to whatever side. Say if it was your right side, to be over a little bit more to your right. And you put your hands down on the inside of your foot, so it's like on the inside of your leg. If this is your leg, here, not there, and your hands go there. And you can either keep your knee up or let your knee go down. And it's a very intense hip stretch, but also it's like one of my favorite hip stretches ever. And I think part of it is because you can really get into that joint and feel the movement of that ball joint in a way that you can in many other poses. It's a little bit more dynamic because you can move around when you're in that really, well, at least I can. I don't know about you. You can move around a little bit more and create some space in that area of the body that tends to hold a lot of tension for most of us. His hips can store a lot of emotions for people, and they're also the flexibility within the hips. Yeah, think of it as a total, not just because you have your inner and your outer areas of your hips along with your gluteus maximus. I mean, it's all connected together, so it's not just this one thing that's like an issue. But tightness in the hips can be a result of stored emotions there that need to be let go, and it can also, along with those emotions, be something if your hips are really tight that your forward momentum gets cut off by not having some decently open hips. You don't have to be super loosey-goosey, and really, you don't want to be super loosey-goosey. The people who, you want like this balance of strength and flexibility, and I think a lot of people, especially in the greater fitness world, who don't practice yoga, they just do yoga, because there is a difference between practicing something as a dedication and just doing something. And people who just do yoga or just teach people who do yoga, and they do yoga but they don't particularly practice it or have a depth to the practice itself of the physical asana, tend to not go as deep into that areas. And the philosophy of how yoga can help you deal with those kind of things, whether it's emotions and stuff like that. If your heart is broken, chest openers, very gentle ones, just laying over like a bolster or a pillow, depending on your mobility and any shoulder issues too. If you have shoulder issues, keep things neutral. You can keep it by your body or cross them over your your chest, whatever's going to protect those joints, because you only get, this is your shoulders you got for life, and they are not quite as robust as the hip is. And even the hip, gets old, and it's like people who fall and break their hip. Usually it's not the fall that breaks the hip, it's their muscles that snap the hip, snap that little bone with the ball joint. Kind of interesting, isn't it? It's like, yeah, your muscles can break your bones. But yeah, atomic pigeon is probably my number one favorite. favorite. Yeah, I'll try and find a picture of it somewhere. Because you didn't really hear about it until Anasura started becoming a bit more of a thing in, well, I guess late 90s, where 90s, beginning of the thousands, of the 2000s, it started to kind of get a little bit more press in, yeah, atomic pigeon. I'll find a picture. It's kind of, it's challenging, definitely. I mean, like any hip opener, it can, depending on how open your hips are, be very challenging. And I find it, for me at least, it's very accessible even when I'm feeling tight. And I'm going to say tight, well, quotes, because my tight is a lot of people's flexible. So I had one teacher, she's Anasura, went to a 2-day class of her. She was from Idaho and she was in town, the local yoga studio, and I remember saying to her, I'm tight today. And she looked at me, she's like, you are not, compared to most people she worked with, because everyone there was fairly flexible, ranging from extremely flexible to just, we all had some good mobility. We were not, muscle bound or tight muscles. We weren't tied up in those kind of things. So you got to remember too, it's like you're tight could be someone else's like total loosey-goosey day. So when I say I'm tight, and it's a bad habit, because you kind of look at like all these really flexible yogis and yoginis and people like ballet dancers and other dancers, and they're extremely hyper flexible, and most of us are never going to reach moments of reach that amount of flexibility for various reasons. Genetics, a lot of your flexibility is developed when you're heading into your teen years, so what you're doing at that point in time can play a factor. Injuries, all sorts of stuff, emotions, all go into flexibility. And I'm really just babbling on here, not even about my favorite yoga pose, but the hips are an important thing to take care of, along with the shoulders too. They're both insertion points for emotions. The hips will hold on to it, and the shoulders in particular are insertion point with grief and anger that can take up residence in your lungs. So those are areas you really just gotta watch, and they're both big mobile joints. Well, they're not so big, the hips are, but they're really complicated joints are where things really will take up residence, especially. So if you have shoulder pain and things like that, look at it holistically and treat it holistic, because there can be multiple layers there going on of injury and emotion and things like that, layered with more emotion and injury layered with, and it builds up this big old bundle of issues that take residence and in our joints. So treat yourself with care, I think, too, is like a big part of it. And hip openers really, and like atomic pigeon, which is a pretty, if you have tight hip, it's going to feel really, tight. It can be very difficult, and it's challenging, and it pushes where you want to go, because you want to pull back because it's not comfortable. And sometimes we need to go out of that comfort zone in a safe way, though, not in a, oh my god, I just ripped my hamstrings, because those will take like 5 years to heal or longer. I know. Tore the same one twice. It was only probably, I injured it once when I was like in my early 20s, then again in my about mid 20s. I injured it twice, and it was probably around 2008 that I stopped feeling that injury. I could feel the tension point in the hamstring of where the injury had been for probably about almost a decade afterwards. So take care of those hamstrings. Let them relax. Don't force them. They don't like to be forced. Do you like to be forced? I don't like to be forced either. Neither do your hamstrings. But Atomic Pigeon, I'll find a picture. I hope, yeah, I think Yoga Journal might have one. Or maybe we'll see if there's a video somewhere out there on the internets. Okay. Thanks for asking a question. Bye-bye.